Think about the dusty roads of medieval Europe. Picture the small, hard-working villages. Do you imagine only young, strong bodies tilling fields and building homes? What if everything you thought about the elderly, from around 1000 to 1400 C, was incomplete? Number 1. Storytellers and keepers of lore. The chill of a medieval winter evening often brought families together, huddled close around a crackling hearth. There was no glowing screen to entertain them, no printed books widely available for everyone to read. Entertainment and education came alive through voices, through stories told by those who had lived long and remembered much. This was the realm of the elderly, often revered as the living libraries of their communities. They held the collective memory of the village, a fragile but powerful collection of tales, histories, and practical wisdom. An old woman, perhaps named Ilara, with lines etched deep around her eyes from years of laughter and worry, might begin a story. Her voice, sometimes raspy, sometimes surprisingly strong, carried the weight of generations. She did not just recite words, she painted pictures with her voice, weaving narratives that transported her listeners far beyond the smoke-filled confines of their humble homes. Children, wide-eyed and eager, would sit closest, absorbing every detail. Younger adults, tired from their day's toil, listened with quiet respect, recognizing the threads of their own lives woven into the fabric of these ancient tales. Ilara might recount the founding of their village, describing how the first settlers cleared the land, built the first crude shelters, and faced the challenges of the wild forest. She would name the ancestors, detailing their deeds, their struggles, and their triumphs. These were not just bedtime stories. They were lessons in resilience, a vital connection to the identity of the community. A scholar named Professor Gwendolyn Price from the University of Winchester, whose work focuses on medieval oral traditions, points out that such narrative genealogies provided a sense of belonging and continuity. They helped villagers understand their place in a lineage stretching back through time, giving meaning to their present struggles. The narratives reinforced communal values, highlighting bravery, loyalty, and the importance of cooperation. Beyond the historical accounts, the elderly were also masters of myth and legend. They knew the stories of local saints, the spirits dwelling in the nearby woods, and the ancient heroes whose exploits resonated with everyday struggles. A tale about a mischievous sprite stealing milk from a cow might not only entertain but also serve as a cautionary reminder to secure provisions properly. A legend of a benevolent forest spirit protecting a traveler could instill respect for the natural world and its hidden dangers. These stories, passed down over lifetimes, encode the collective understanding of their environment, their beliefs, and their moral framework. Dr. Rhys Davies, a folklorist who has extensively researched medieval European oral culture, argues that these narrative forms were crucial for transmitting abstract concepts and ethical guidelines in a way that was easily understood and remembered by everyone. The elderly storytellers were not just entertaining, they were educators. They taught children through parables and fables, illustrating the consequences of greed, the rewards of kindness, and the perils of dishonesty. A story about a foolish young man who defied his elders and faced ruin served as a powerful lesson for impressionable minds. They taught practical skills too, embedded within the narratives. A story about a successful hunt might subtly describe the tracking techniques used, or a tale of a bountiful harvest could mention the optimal time for planting certain crops. This method of teaching, wrapped in an engaging narrative, ensured that essential knowledge was absorbed almost unconsciously. The knowledge of the land, the weather patterns, the behavior of animals, and the properties of plants often came embedded in these narratives. A long memory for droughts, for harsh winters, for successful harvests, and for failed endeavors was invaluable. They recalled which streams ran dry in summer, which parts of the forest were richest in berries, and which roots were edible after a harsh frost. This specific localized environmental knowledge, gathered over decades, saved lives and sustained livelihoods. Sometimes the role of lorekeeper extended to more formal duties, like during village disputes or during times of critical decision-making. When a boundary between fields was unclear, or when a family claimed rights to a particular resource, an elder could be called upon to recount the historical understanding, to narrate how things had been done in the past, or to recall the agreements made by previous generations. Their testimony, rooted in long memory and the collective oral tradition, carried immense weight. An elder, recalling the exact words of an agreement made decades ago by two now-deceased farmers, could effectively resolve a conflict that baffled younger villagers. This informal legal memory was a cornerstone of village justice. Records from the manorial courts in various parts of medieval England, such as those found in the archives of the Bishop of Durham, sometimes mention appeals to the memory of the oldest inhabitants when resolving disputes over land tenure or common rights. The physical act of storytelling itself became a ritual. It was a time for communal gathering, for shared warmth, and for the strengthening of social bonds. The flickering light of the fire, the hushed anticipation, the familiar cadences of the elder's voice all contributed to an atmosphere of reverence and connection. These moments provided comfort and stability in a world often marked by uncertainty and hardship. As time wore on, the details might shift slightly with each telling, but the core truths and lessons remained, adapting subtly to the changing needs of the community while preserving its essence. The elderly, by keeping these stories alive, ensured that the past was never truly gone and that the lessons learned by their ancestors continued to guide the present and future generations. Their role was not merely about recounting, it was about connecting, about preserving, and about building the very foundations of communal identity and survival. A life lived long provided an unparalleled store of information, making the old the invaluable conduits of collective memory and wisdom in a world that thrived on spoken narratives. They were the walking, breathing histories of their world. Number 2. Healers and herbalists. When illness swept through a medieval village, whether it was a sudden fever, a persistent cough, or a festering wound, formal medical practitioners were often miles away, or their services were simply too expensive for the average villager. In such times of vulnerability, the community turned to those with a lifetime of accumulated knowledge. The elderly, these individuals, often women, served as the village healers and herbalists, holding a profound, practical understanding of local plants, traditional remedies, and the human body's response to various ailments. Their experience was their greatest qualification, built up over decades of observation, trial, and error. An old woman known affectionately as Agnes might be the first person sought out when a child developed a cough that refused to leave, or a farmer twisted an ankle in the fields. Agnes did not rely on complex surgical instruments or Latin texts. Her tools were her keen eyes, her gentle hands, and a vast mental library of the natural world around her. She knew which weeds growing by the stream could reduce swelling, which berries were safe to eat, and which roots could soothe a troubled stomach. Her remedies were drawn directly from the local environment, from the woods, the meadows, and the riverbanks surrounding the village. Archaeological excavations of medieval village sites, such as those conducted at Warham Percy in Yorkshire, often uncover remnants of medicinal herbs, suggesting their widespread use in domestic settings. Agnes would spend hours foraging, identifying plants not by written names, but by their unique leaf patterns, their scent, and their seasonal appearance. She knew the proper time to gather certain herbs, understanding that a plant's potency could vary throughout the year. She prepared infusions from dried leaves for fevers, concocted poultices from mashed roots for infections, and brewed teas from flowers for sleeplessness. A young mother worried about her baby's constant crying would bring the infant to Agnes, who might gently examine the child and then suggest a calming herb mixed with honey, passed down through generations of healers. The effectiveness of these remedies was often anecdotal, but the comfort and care provided were undeniable, offering hope and practical assistance in a time of limited medical options. Beyond the physical ailments, these elder healers often understood the intertwined nature of mind and body. They offered solace and advice for anxieties and sorrows. Recognizing that emotional distress could manifest as physical symptoms, their consultations were not quick, sterile affairs. They involved listening, empathy, and a deep understanding of the individual's circumstances within the community. An old man, perhaps named Thomas, respected for his steady hand and calm demeanor, might be called upon to set a broken bone. He would carefully manipulate the limb, using his years of experience to feel for the correct alignment, and then bind it with splints made from willow branches, securing them with linen strips. He would then advise on rest and nutrition, perhaps offering a broth fortified with nutrient-rich herbs. His knowledge was not taught in a formal school. It was absorbed through a lifetime of watching, learning, and doing, often from his own elders. Historian Patricia Skinner, in her work on medieval medicine, highlights the role of domestic care and traditional knowledge in managing health in the absence of institutionalized medicine. The knowledge possessed by these elder healers was often passed down through an informal apprenticeship, typically within families or among trusted community members. A young girl or boy showing an aptitude for observation or a particular interest in plants might spend hours accompanying an elder on foraging trips, learning to identify harvest and prepare the remedies. They learned not just the names of the plants, but their properties, the best conditions for their growth, and the precise methods for their preparation. This was a direct hands-on transfer of specialized knowledge, crucial for the survival and well-being of the village. The continuous generational transfer of this expertise ensured that vital medical traditions were preserved. Sometimes, the elderly healers were also responsible for rites of passage, like aiding in childbirth. An experienced elder woman, having attended countless births, would bring a calming presence, practical guidance, and knowledge of herbal aids to ease the process. Her accumulated experience meant she knew the signs of distress, when to encourage the mother, and when to seek assistance from others. The continuity of life in the village often literally depended on the wisdom and skill of these elder women. This role was particularly important, given the high rates of infant and maternal mortality during the medieval period. The respect for these elder healers was immense. Their wisdom was seen as a gift, their knowledge a lifeline. Their presence in the village offered a tangible sense of security and a first line of defense against the relentless assaults of disease and injury. They were not just individuals, they embodied centuries of accumulated practical medicine, a deep connection to the natural world, and a compassionate commitment to the well-being of their neighbors. Their contributions often went unrecorded in official documents, but were etched deeply into the survival and health of every medieval village. Their long lives provided the canvas upon which generations of practical medical wisdom were drawn and preserved. Number 3. Childcare bunters and educators. In the bustling, often chaotic world of a medieval village, where adult labor was essential for survival, the care and upbringing of the youngest members of the community were paramount. While parents toiled in the fields, spun wool, or engaged in trades, the responsibility for looking after children often fell to the elderly. These grandmothers and grandfathers, no longer strong enough for the heaviest physical tasks, found a new and invaluable purpose in nurturing the next generation. They were not just babysitters, they were primary caregivers, educators, and the first storytellers shaping young minds in the earliest years of life. An older woman, perhaps named Martha, would often sit by the hearth, her hands busy with mending clothes or preparing simple meals, while a clutch of toddlers played at her feet. She would keep a watchful eye on them, mediating squabbles with a patient voice and offering comfort for scraped knees. Her gentle presence created a stable and predictable environment for the children, allowing their parents to work without constant worry. This multi-generational living arrangement was common, as historical evidence from medieval demographic studies suggests households frequently included grandparents. The elder's role freed younger, able-bodied adults to perform physically demanding labor that was critical for the family's and the village's sustenance. A family with an elderly member who could care for children possessed a distinct advantage, as it allowed both parents to contribute more effectively to the household economy. Beyond basic supervision, the elderly were crucial educators. They did not teach from books, but through practical demonstration and storytelling. An old man, perhaps called Gareth, with calloused hands from a lifetime of labor, might show a young boy how to whittle a piece of wood, how to tie a simple knot, or how to identify common birds by their calls. These were not formal lessons in a classroom. They were informal, day-to-day teachings woven into the fabric of daily life. Gareth might teach the boy how to properly maintain a simple tool or how to select the best kind of wood for a fire, passing on knowledge that was accumulated over his many years. These practical skills, often essential for survival and future livelihood, were transmitted effectively by those who had mastered them over decades. The elderly also acted as the primary transmitters of social norms and cultural values. They taught children manners, respect for elders, the importance of communal cooperation, and the consequences of selfish behavior. Through constant presence and gentle guidance, they instilled a sense of right and wrong, shaping the moral compass of the next generation. A child might learn to share their meager portion of food with a sibling, or to help a neighbor in need, through the consistent guidance and stories provided by an elder. These lessons were not abstract. They were demonstrated through daily interactions and reinforced by the elder's calm authority and respected position within the household. Sociologist Dr. Evelyn Reed, in her analyses of early communal structures, emphasizes the critical role of older generations in the socialization process of children in pre-industrial societies. Storytelling was another vital educational tool. As mentioned previously, the elderly were repositories of village lore, myths, and fables. These stories, told repeatedly, taught children about their history, their heroes, and the spiritual beliefs of their community. They learned lessons of courage, perseverance, and the importance of adhering to traditional ways. The stories also provided a source of entertainment and escapism during long, dark evenings, fostering imagination and language development. A child learning a traditional song from their grandmother was not just being entertained. They were being connected to a cultural heritage that stretched back centuries, forming a bond with their community and its past. The elderly also played a significant role in providing care for children when parents were ill or deceased. In an age when life was fragile and death could strike suddenly, the elderly often stepped in to ensure that orphaned or semi-orphaned children had a stable home and continued care. This informal foster care system, driven by communal solidarity and familial bonds, was crucial for maintaining the social fabric of the village and preventing children from becoming destitute. The long experience of the elderly in raising their own children and grandchildren made them uniquely qualified to provide this vital support during times of crisis. This role was not just about imparting knowledge, it was about providing emotional security and a stable environment. The constant presence of a loving and experienced elder could offer a sense of continuity and comfort in a world full of unpredictable challenges. Their patience, born from years of life experience, allowed them to nurture young minds at their own pace, fostering curiosity and a love of learning. The elderly were the first teachers, the first guardians of the children's spirits, and the foundational pillars upon which the future of the medieval village was built. Their contribution ensured that the knowledge, skills, and values necessary for survival and prosperity were not only preserved, but actively cultivated in each new generation, ensuring the village's enduring legacy. Number 4. Dispute mediators and council elders. Life in a medieval village was characterized by close quarters, shared resources, and an interdependence that often led to friction. Disputes, whether over land boundaries, water rights, stray animals, or personal grievances, were inevitable. While manorial lords and their courts held ultimate legal authority, immediate conflicts within the village often required quicker, more accessible resolutions. This is where the elderly stepped in, acting as informal dispute mediators and wise counselors, their long lives and accumulated wisdom making them invaluable arbiters of peace and order. An argument between two farmers, perhaps over a cow that wandered into a neighbor's field and damaged crops, would not necessarily escalate to the Lord's court immediately. Instead, the villagers might turn to an elder, such as an old man named Eamon, who had witnessed many seasons and knew the intricacies of local customs and the history of every family in the village. Eamon would listen patiently to both sides, his calm demeanor and respected position creating an atmosphere where reason could prevail. His impartiality was often assured by his age. He was less likely to be swayed by current rivalries or personal gain, having seen generations come and go. This perception of neutrality lent significant weight to his judgment. Dr. Stephen Rigby, a historian specializing in medieval social structures, highlights the importance of customary law and local arbitration in village life, often preceding or replacing formal legal processes. He might recall a similar dispute from decades past, the way it was resolved, or the long-standing understanding between the two families involved. He knew which boundary markers had been traditionally recognized, or who had the customary right to graze animals on a particular piece of common land during certain seasons. His deep knowledge of village history, its unwritten rules, and the character of its inhabitants allowed him to offer solutions that were rooted in tradition and tailored to the specific circumstances. He was not making new laws, but interpreting and applying the old ones, the ones that lived in the collective memory of the community. Regards from various medieval English manors, such as those analyzed by historians from the Victoria County History Project, sometimes refer to the ancient custom of the vill, or the memory of the oldest inhabitants as evidence in legal proceedings. Beyond individual disputes, elderly villagers often formed an informal council, consulted on matters affecting the entire community. When decisions needed to be made about planting schedules, the repair of shared infrastructure, like a well or a bridge, or how to respond to a new demand from the Lord, the voices of the elders carried particular weight. They offered perspectives grounded in past experiences, warning against past mistakes and suggesting time-tested solutions. An elder woman, perhaps named Isolde, respected for her sharp mind and practical insights, might advise on the best time to organize a communal harvest based on her recollection of past weather patterns and crop yields. Her advice was not always followed, but it was always heard with respect. The authority of these elders was not enforced by power or wealth, but by respect and moral standing. They embodied the wisdom of accumulated years, having navigated countless challenges and witnessed the outcomes of various choices. Their presence in a gathering lent gravity and solemnity to discussions. They acted as a stabilizing force, promoting continuity and adherence to established practices, which was crucial in a world that valued tradition and stability. The village headman or reeve, though holding official authority, often consulted with these informal elder councils before making significant decisions, recognizing the depth of their communal knowledge and the trust they commanded among the villagers. Sometimes, their role involved mediating between the villagers and the Lord's representatives. An elder, fluent in the customary rights of the villagers and articulate in their grievances, could act as a bridge between the two parties, helping to negotiate terms or present petitions in a way that was both respectful and firm. Their long-standing presence in the village often gave them a unique perspective on the evolving relationship with the Lord and the history of agreements and disagreements. This ability to navigate the complex social hierarchy, drawing on years of observation and interaction, was a subtle but powerful form of advocacy. The presence of elderly mediators fostered a sense of communal justice and solidarity. Knowing that there were respected individuals who could help resolve conflicts without resorting to potentially damaging formal litigation strengthened the bonds within the village. It reduced internal strife and promoted cooperation, which was essential for a community that depended on collective effort for survival. The elderly, in this role, were not merely problem solvers. They were the guardians of social cohesion, preserving the fragile peace that allowed medieval village life to flourish. Their long lives and deep understanding of the community's history provided the foundation for fair and enduring resolutions to the inevitable conflicts of shared existence. Number 5. Specialized craft and skill preservation. Medieval village life, while seemingly simple, depended on a vast array of practical skills and specialized crafts. From the intricate weaving of durable textiles to the precise shaping of tools, these crafts often required years, even decades, of dedicated practice to master. As individuals aged and the physical demands of heavier labor became too much, many elderly villagers transitioned into roles where their accumulated skill, rather than brute strength, was paramount. They became the quiet custodians of specialized knowledge, ensuring that complex crafts and essential techniques were not lost to succeeding generations. An elderly woman, perhaps named Agnes, whose fingers were gnarled with age but still remarkably deft, might sit at a loom weaving the finest linen or wool. Her eyesight, though perhaps failing for distant objects, remained sharp for the close work of threading shuttles and maintaining tension. While younger women might handle the bulk of simpler weaving, Agnes specialized in intricate patterns or particularly fine threads, producing high-value textiles for specific purposes like ceremonial garments or trading goods. Her expertise was not just in the act of weaving, but in the entire process, knowing which types of wool were best for which cloth, how to prepare and dye the fibers using local plants, and how to maintain the loom itself. Professor Caroline Goodson, a historian focusing on medieval material culture, often notes how specialized artisanal knowledge was concentrated among certain individuals in pre-industrial communities. Similarly, an old man, perhaps a retired smith known as Old Thomas, might no longer swing a heavy hammer at the forge all day. Instead, his refined skill lay in the delicate work of repairing broken tools, sharpening blades to a razor's edge, or creating intricate metal fittings. He knew the precise temperature at which to work different metals, how to temper steel to make it durable, and the subtle signs of a perfect weld. Younger smiths, still learning the trade, would bring him their challenging repairs, seeking his advice and watching his expert hands. Thomas's value was in his irreplaceable experience, the subtle tricks of the trade that could only be learned over many years of practice. Excavations of medieval village sites occasionally reveal workshops where older individuals might have performed lighter, more detailed craftwork, distinct from the heavy labor of younger artisans. The preservation of these specialized skills often happened through informal apprenticeships, much like the healing knowledge. A young person, perhaps a grandchild or a neighbor's child, would spend time with the elder, observing, assisting, and slowly absorbing the nuances of the craft. They might start by performing simple, repetitive tasks, gradually moving to more complex procedures under the elder's watchful eye. This was a slow, painstaking transfer of knowledge, not through manuals, but through shared activity and direct correction. An elder basket weaver, for example, could teach the subtle art of selecting pliable reeds, the specific tension needed for different weaves, and the traditional patterns that had been passed down for generations. The patience and repetition required for mastery made the elderly, with their often less demanding physical schedules, ideal teachers. Beyond visible crafts, some elders held specialized knowledge of construction techniques, particularly those related to traditional building methods or the maintenance of specific structures like watermills or communal ovens. An old stonemason might advise on the best way to repair a crumbling wall using local stone and mortar, his understanding of the materials and the local environment refined over a lifetime. An older carpenter could guide the repair of a roof, knowing the weak points of ancient timbers and the methods for bracing them against the elements. This expertise meant that vital village infrastructure could be maintained without relying on external, often expensive, skilled laborers. Even within agriculture, some elderly individuals retained specialized roles. An old farmer, no longer able to plow vast fields, might be an expert in seed selection, knowing which varieties performed best in specific soils or how to preserve seeds through the winter for the next planting season. They might have a unique understanding of local microclimates or soil conditions, knowledge gained from decades of observing the land. This granular, highly localized agricultural wisdom was essential for maximizing yield and adapting to changing conditions, a quiet but profound contribution to the village's food security. The elderly, by continuing to practice and teach these specialized crafts and skills, provided a vital link in the chain of knowledge transmission. They ensured that the community remained self-sufficient in essential areas, reducing its reliance on external sources and preserving its unique cultural practices. Their continued productivity, even in lighter capacities, meant they remained contributing members of society, highly valued for their unique contributions. Their hands, though aged, continued to shape the tools, the clothes, and the structures that made village life possible, representing a profound and enduring legacy of skill and wisdom. Number 6. Spiritual guides and ritual leaders. In the deeply spiritual world of medieval Europe, where faith permeated every aspect of daily life, the elderly often held a special position as conduits between the mundane and the divine. Whether adhering to the formalized doctrines of the Christian Church or quietly preserving older pre-Christian customs, older villagers frequently served as spiritual guides and leaders of rituals. Their age was seen as a sign of accumulated wisdom, proximity to the ancestors, and a deeper understanding of the sacred mysteries, making them invaluable figures in the spiritual health of the community. An old woman, known as a wise woman in her village, might be sought out not only for her herbal remedies but for her insights into omens, dreams, or signs from the natural world. She might be approached by a young couple seeking a blessing for their marriage, or by a farmer worried about the success of his harvest. She would not typically conduct formal church services, but rather offer guidance and perform small localized rituals rooted in centuries of tradition. These might include blessings for livestock, charms against misfortune, or rituals to ensure fertility of the land. Anthropological studies of folk religion in medieval Europe, like those by Professor Ronald Hutton, often highlight the persistence of localized spiritual practices existing alongside official church doctrine. These elderly spiritual guides often remembered ancient ways that predated the full establishment of Christianity in their region, or blended passing with it. They might know the precise timing for planting or harvesting based on older lunar calendars, or the specific prayers or offerings that were believed to appease local spirits of the land or water. Their knowledge was not derived from books or theological training, but from a lived tradition passed down through generations. An old man, perhaps named Osbert, might lead a small group of villagers in a ritual at a sacred spring, seeking its blessing for health and prosperity, a practice that might have roots in ancient paganism but was tolerated or even integrated into the local Christian framework. Archaeological findings, such as the discovery of votive offerings near natural springs in medieval contexts, suggest the continuity of such localized spiritual practices. The elderly often played a critical role in rites of passage. At births, marriages, and deaths, their presence brought a sense of continuity and solemnity. At a christening, an elder might offer a traditional blessing that combined Christian prayers with older protective charms. At a wedding, they might impart advice on harmonious living, drawing from their long experience of marriage and family life. And crucially, at funerals, they often prepared the body, led mourners in traditional laments, and guided the community through the complex rituals surrounding death and remembrance. Their calm, experienced demeanor provided comfort during times of grief and transition. The detailed accounts of funerary practices in medieval Europe often describe the involvement of older community members in preparing the deceased and leading the mourning rituals, as noted in works like The Medieval Cemetery by Roberta Gilchrist. Their role also extended to interpreting the natural world through a spiritual lens. A persistent drought, an unexpected flood, or a strange animal behavior might be interpreted by an elder as a sign or message, prompting the community to reflect on its actions or to engage in particular prayers or offerings. They were seen as having a deeper connection to the rhythms of nature and the subtle communications of the divine, a sensitivity sharpened by years of observation and reflection. This interpretation offered a framework for understanding unpredictable events and a path toward seeking spiritual solace or intervention. The respect afforded to elderly spiritual guides was profound. They were seen as custodians of the sacred, ensuring that the community maintained a proper relationship with the divine and the natural world. Their long lives were often interpreted as a sign of divine favor or a testament to their spiritual purity, further enhancing their authority. Their advice on moral matters, family dilemmas, or community disputes was often sought, carrying the weight of both their personal wisdom and their perceived spiritual insight. They were trusted advisors to the village priest or minister, often bridging the gap between formal church doctrine and the deeply embedded folk beliefs and practices of the local populace. In essence, the elderly provided a spiritual anchor for the medieval village. They maintained traditions, offered guidance, and performed rituals that brought meaning, comfort, and a sense of order to a world that could often be harsh and unpredictable. Their deep understanding of both the human spirit and the natural world, cultivated over decades of life, made them indispensable figures in the daily spiritual lives of their communities. Their role was not always codified or formally recognized, but their influence was undeniable. A subtle yet powerful force guiding the hearts and minds of the villagers through the cycles of life, death, and belief.